What's going on, everybody? Jim from Girafon Orbital here. I wanted to go over an install commission that I completed almost 2 weeks ago, but now I can finally do a video for it. This is for an SK, I think it's the V4, from Warsabers. So the reason that I'm doing this video now is because we ran into an issue during this install. Right, so after I completed this install, I started recording a demo. Halfway through the demo, I saw that there was an issue with the switches and the NeoPixel accents underneath the control box. So after a deep dive on this control box, come to find out one of the ribbon connectors for this control box, the ribbon connector itself, one of the pins, actually it was two of the pins, were severed. Because you have to bend some of these ribbon cables to get them in the control box. So I was a little concerned. I really thought, I still think that, the solution that Warsabers has figured out to have USB-C charging and board access as well as the switches in that control box, it's a very elegant solution. However, you're trying to jam so much into such a small space. Sometimes you can run into issues, right? Essentially what Warsabers offers or includes with this Hilt is a helper board for the control box. And the helper board has an onboard USB-C port. It has tactile buttons. It has LEDs and NeoPixels. So you can choose to wire up which accents, if you want to go with LEDs or if you want to go with NeoPixels, which I thought was really, really nice. These connect to a PCB module in the next section via ribbon connectors or ribbon cables, right? We also have PCBs for the crystal chamber module. There's a brass crystal chamber. Behind that, there is another PCB with onboard NeoPixels, and that also is what carries the power up to your blade emitter. And then underneath the crystal chamber is another PCB that has two NeoPixels in it to light the crystal from below. So really, really elegant situation with the crystal chamber and the control box, but there's a lot. There's a lot going on in this control box. You can choose to wire up everything separately and forego the USB-C port if you want. But for this particular build, the client did want to utilize the USB-C port for charging as well as easy board access, which is nice. It's nice to be able to plug in right into the control box if you want to get to your board or anything like that. But the problem here is, we ran into an issue with one of the ribbon connectors, and I'm going to talk about that when we do an up and close. And I do want to go over some of the actual PCBs and things like that. So before we do that, we're going to come into Fusion and talk about the chassis, and then we're going to come up top and do a demo. All right, so let's come into Fusion. Here is the chassis that I designed for this particular Hilt. So right off the bat, you will notice that there is a notch in this chassis. So one of those PCBs that I talked about pokes down into the waist section of this Hilt. So I needed to allow for that, right? So that's what that notch is for. At the bottom, we've got a 28mm speaker. This channel right here is for a USB charging module. So in order to utilize the USB-C port in the control box, you also need a charging module, which is essentially like a trickle charger, right? So that's how you charge your battery with the USB-C port in the control box. Proffie V3 sits in this tray. It does slide up underneath this lip to help secure it in place. Around back, we've got our battery tray. No room for a kill switch in this chassis. You've just got so much going on with the charging module here. There's just no room for a kill switch anyhow. So you serve as the kill switch when you put the battery in, right? And that's it. So obviously greeblies all over the place on this guy as well. And that's it, right? So let's come up top, talking about this Hilt. So this is the Warsabers SK. It's a really, really nice looking Hilt, in my opinion. I think I'm one of the minorities that thinks the thin waist or the wasp waist is a good looking waist. So this does not have that. It's a little bit of a thicker waist, but that's fine. It's a really, really solid hilt, right? So let's talk about these PCBs, okay? I just so happened to get another Warsabers commission. After I finished this one and posted the glams for it, somebody reached out to me and said that they wanted the same thing, right? So I got another Warsabers in for install. But these are the PCBs that they include, okay? These got to be, they have to be popped out, obviously. But here is the control box PCB. So we've got our 2 tactile switches. Here is our USB-C port. There are LEDs in the middle here. This middle PCB is what goes behind the crystal chamber. And this is pretty cool in that you bring your power up to the bottom of it. It goes behind the crystal chamber, and you can continue your power up to the blade PCB. And this goes underneath the crystal chamber, and it's got some really nice pogo pins. I mean, it's just a really well engineered PCB solution, but there's just so much going on, right? Here is the ribbon connector at the bottom. In the waist, this is where you've got to, so you hook up your ribbon connector to the control box, bring this ribbon into the waist section, and this module is what sits in the waist section. And that is where you make all of your connections, right? So you've got your switch pads, you've got your LED pads, your data pads, your power, and all that. So that's where you make your connection there. And then another ribbon connector is attached to this, and that goes down into the board. That's where this guy goes, right? So the problem with having, I mean, it's nice having these ribbon connectors. I mean, they do fit into tight spaces. However, these ribbon connectors are very delicate. Not only are the ribbon connectors delicate, but the connection, like the ports where you slide them in and lock them in place, these can be very delicate as well. I've found that if these are old, they get really brittle. Putting this ribbon connector into the helper board, you need to bend it at almost a 90-degree angle to get it to fit inside of this control box. So unfortunately, what happened, one of these pins on this ribbon connector, two of them severed. And I wasn't able to see that until I disassembled the control box again and got my magnifying goggles out. And I noticed that we had a break in 2 of the pins, and that was causing the switches to malfunction as well as the NeoPixels. So I reached out to Warsabers and asked if they had any replacement helper boards. And to their credit, they did get back to me relatively quickly, and they did say that they no longer offer these. But they did give me the part number for the ribbon connectors. So luckily, it wasn't the port that was faulty. It was just the ribbon connector, and I was able to order more of those and get them replaced. So I ordered a bunch of them just in case, right? But yeah, I was looking online, and a number of people have had the same issue where there's just so much going on that a lot of people actually choose to forego even using a lot of the PCBs and just choose to wire everything up independently. But we are where we're at, right? I'm just glad that we were able to figure out a solution with those ribbon connectors, and everything's working great. So that's the PCBs. Let's talk about the hilt, right? So I weathered this hilt as a request by the client. I do like weathering SKs. I've done quite a bit of the Corbanth SKs. So I did the same application of aluminum black, disassembled everything, obviously. So I took the grip fins off, took all the greeblies off. I took the hardware out and heat stained the hardware. Then I did a pass of aluminum black. Oh, I also knocked down a lot of the edges and the anodization here, just to make it look a little bit more used, right? Did a pass of aluminum black over everything. When that was finished, I did come back with some burnt sienna, like a burnt sienna wash for some rust. The crystal chamber and the bars are all real brass, so I gave those the natural brass patina treatment with some vinegar, so we get those nice dark browns and greens in that, and that's it. So let's talk about how to use this guy. Here is the chassis. So this is a Proffie V3 install. Here is the other end of that charging module, right? So This is what goes up through the waist section into the control box to get to this USB-C port. So this is what allows you to get to your board from here. I've also got some leads coming down to this charging module, and that's what allows us to charge the battery through USB-C, right? And that's it. I kept this chassis just matte black. This will be a traveler for the client. The client will be taking this on the road. They will be taking it to Galaxy's Edge, so they did want like a more utilitarian style of an install. So they didn't want anything too crazy with NeoPixels or anything like that, because they wanted to try and conserve as much battery life as possible, right? So let's talk about how to use this guy. Spring side is your negative. You want to take the flat part of your battery, rest it in that battery tray. You will obviously hear an audible cue when you put your battery in. There is the lit crystal chamber. So behind the crystal chamber, we've got 6 NeoPixels, and there are 2 underneath. Those are 2 separate animations. I also have I've wired up the NeoPixels in the control box, but these are in line with the blade. Right? The client also requested that I do a custom blade plug for this order. I don't often do blade plugs, but if clients ask me, I do oblige, right? So I've done that with this particular install. So I'm going to leave that out for the demo, but I will be including that when I ship it back. All right, so let's come down to the bottom. So there's that lit crystal chamber. Let's see what else we got.
Ancient integration.
And there is that control box that's got 2 NeoPixels. Really nice shine through in this glass eye. Nice hit. Let's put a blade in it. This is a 1-inch blade holder. Put your blade down in that blade holder, rest it on those PCB pins. This has an M4 set screw or grub screw in here, which I really appreciate. I always like when there are larger set screws for your blade retention. So you rest your blade down in there, tighten that blade retention screw till it's hugging the blade, and you're ready to go. See what else you put on here.
Don't talk back to your elders, child.
One more.
And that team is ready for launch.
Twist to activate, twist to deactivate are on. The majority of these fonts have also been set up with color wheel. To get to color wheel, you want to hold down aux and tap main. When you find a color you like, tap main again. It'll lock that color in.
Lord Vader.
One more.
General Kenobi.
Nice hilt. Really, really nice hilt. Solid. So that is it. That is the Warsabers SK. So ran into a little bit of a hiccup with this install, but luckily we were able to figure out a solution. To Warsabers' credit, they did, again, like I like to mention, that they did get back to me really, really quickly and let me know the part number of those ribbon connectors. So dodged a bullet there, right? So that's all I got. To the client, thank you very much for trusting me with your install. I look forward to seeing pictures of you at Galaxy's Edge with this hilt. To the viewers, everybody, thank you very much for the support. Thank you for watching. If anyone has any questions, please don't be a stranger. And with that being said, may the force be with you, always. Have a good one, everybody.